What is up, New York Giants fans? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tommy's Takes. I'm your host, Tommy G. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. And for that, thank you. Please like and subscribe, turn on notifications. As usual, you can check me out on Twitter at TommyG105. I'll be dropping the hottest Giants content all season long. Your support is always appreciated, so for that, thank you again. And without further ado, big win for the Giants, 25-22 over the defending AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals. Was really a great game from start to finish. Cincinnati didn't play their starters. Oh well. Giants got their work in. Started out a little rough. Daniel Jones and the Giants' first drive of the game stalled out on a 4th and 1 after a first down. Second drive also stalled out after an interception. Tough play. It was a slant route to Daniel Bellinger over the middle. It was a hot rocket coming out of Jones' arm. Hit Bellinger right in the hands and unfortunately deflected and was picked off by rookie Daxton Hill, who coincidentally I did like coming out of the draft. A very solid safety. So first two drives were not good for the New York Giants against the backups. Again, when you're looking at this Giants team and the offense, it's going to take time for it to blend. You have a new head coach. You have a new offensive coordinator. You have new offensive linemen. And that's not an excuse for Daniel Jones. Two things can be right at the same time. Has nothing to do with Daniel Jones. This offense is going to take time to develop and to get going. And you've seen it versus the Bengals. Because when the third drive came around, Daniel Jones was untouchable. He was 8 of 9, 78 yards, led the team right down the field for a touchdown. Really awesome drive, looked in sync. The pass blocking was phenomenal. The offensive line last night was probably some of the best blocking, pass blocking, run blocking I've seen from this Giants team in a long, long time. They really did a great job. Shout out to Bobby Johnson, the offensive line coach, kind of putting a patchwork line out there. He sent out I believe it was Thomas, Devery Hamilton, Max Garcia, Glowinski, and Neal. So you had a couple starters out there. But shout out to the offensive line. Even when the backups came in, did a really phenomenal job. Got a little bit sketchy when they put Holden at center, and he had a tough time snapping the ball. Other than that, the offensive line was phenomenal, especially on that drive. Daniel Jones had forever in the pocket. He had good touch. He had the back shoulder throw to Sills. Speaking of Sills, wide receivers look phenomenal. Sills look great. We're going to get to Bachman in a minute. But Jones really, really looked comfortable on that drive. And I think, when you look at it, he kind of showed you what he can be. And it's not about everything has to be perfect and, he needs all pros at every position. Daniel Jones showed you versus the Bengals that when he gets into a rhythm, he's a very accurate quarterback. He could hit the back shoulder. He could hit the deep pass. He could hit the backside of the backfield. He could hit the intermediate route. And I think as a Giants fan, again, grain of salt, it was against the backups. I think as a Giants fan, you got to be pumped. You got to be pumped for what you've seen from Daniel Jones. He had the one pick, like I said, that should have been caught. Very shades of Evan Ingram there. But I won't put that on the rookie Bellinger. I think he's going to be a great player. But Jones showed you when he has time, when he gets in a rhythm, he could do what needs to be done. And the offensive line allowed him to do that. So it was a great game. Jones played 3 drives. After the big drive for the touchdown, they took him out of there. Giants and Bengals kind of went back and forth. 3 minutes left. Cincinnati takes a 22-18 lead. I believe it was Jaquez Patrick 3-yard touchdown run. And hey, I gotta tell you, Davis Webb, he was brought onto the team to be that kind of coach on the field, that kind of third quarterback, but coach in the locker room. Davis Webb brought it last night. Tyrod Taylor struggled. Tyrod, I believe, was 7 of 11 for 37 yards. Davis Webb was 22 of 27, 204 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and a rushing 2-point conversion. So Davis Webb brought his A game last night. So, when you're looking at that quarterback room, obviously Tyrod Taylor is the better quarterback. I put out a joking tweet saying, Webb was better than Tyrod. Tyrod is the better quarterback, on the roster. But shout out to Webb, man. 3 minutes left in the game. It's a preseason game. A lot of people are thinking about going home, not worried about the final score, and he led them down the field, and he hit Bachman again, and the Giants won 25-22. Really good game. You've seen a lot of positives. Again, I want to touch on the offensive line. Evan Neal looked very good. He had, I think, 1 or 2 reps that were a little iffy, but Evan Neal looked awesome. Used his strength, used his length. I talked about it earlier in the week. Once he mentally, this is going to sound a little weird, once he mentally grows into his body and his frame, he's going to be a monster. So any struggles he has right now, take it in stride, take it with a grain of salt, because he's going to be a great right tackle in this league. And he showed it last night. Played a fantastic game. I also was very happy with Devery Hamilton. You've heard me talk about him on the show before. Young kid. Yeah, he played at Duke and Stanford. Has bounced around a little bit, but he looks good. He looked great last night. The running game, opened up some holes. So really, really happy with the offensive line. Davis Webb looked great. The receiving core played well. David Sills made a couple of fantastic plays. So Sills Army, I know you're happy. You got one last night. Let's see what happens. And the Giants are going to have an interesting conundrum when it comes to, the 53-man roster when they're looking at some of these receivers, because you have Sills has played well now. You have Bachman played unbelievable last night. Richie James has played well. Colin Johnson, again, making plays last night. This is going to be tough because you already have Galladay, Tony, Wandale, Shepard's coming back. You have a stacked receiver room, and now you got these 3-4 guys battling it out. And national TV putting it together, playing well. But that's a good problem to have. So the Giants should be very happy about that. They should be very happy about the progress that they had in the game. Everybody's going to say it was against the backups, and you can't take too much from it. And, it's a learning experience. I take a couple things from it. One, Giants are not a very good team. They haven't been a very good team for a long time. So it doesn't matter who they play. The Giants are essentially playing themselves when they play a game, right? So what I mean by that is trying not to make mistakes, trying to develop in the system, right? Trying to show themselves that they could play against some of these teams. But it starts within you and you making the plays and you saying to yourself, all right, I didn't jump off sides. I didn't have a holding penalty. I didn't do this. I can play in this league. And some of those Giants showed that last night. So I think it was valuable reps. Giants play the Jets next week. It's going to be interesting because there were some significant injuries in this game that I'm going to get to. But just really quick, Jones finished 4 for 16 for 116 yards. What could you say, right? So, you don't know if Jones is going to play next week. He's probably going to go into Tennessee off this performance. I'm excited for the Giants. I think for once, at least for the first time in a few years here, probably since Pat Shurmur, they have a functional offensive game plan, and you've seen some of that versus the Bengals. One specific play where Jones rolls out and he has, 2 options kind of layered right next to each other on the rollout, and it turned out to be a 4-yard completion, but you could just see the system and you could see the strategy. You could see there's different layers, levels when Jones drops back. I really like this offense, especially for Daniel Jones, and if this was his last drive until Tennessee, so be it. He's got to prove it. He's on a prove-it year. But if anything, if versus the Bengals was any sign of things to come, I think he could play well in this offense. Now, does he play well enough to get a contract next year with the Giants or another team? That's a whole nother episode by itself. But he played very well. Do want to get to the defense a little bit. The starting defense against the backups of Cincinnati played pretty well. I thought they did a solid job. Got really sloppy in the second half. Gave up a couple late touchdowns. But there were a couple of players that stood out. If you really look at it, you have Timon Fox, who played very, very well. He was the one that Lawrence Taylor shouted out during the preseason and said, yeah, he's undrafted free agent. He's hungry. He could play. So keep an eye on him. It'd be tough for him to make the 53-man. We have some linebackers, so it's going to be tough, but he played well last night. You also have, when you really think about it, the D-line played solid. Wasn't a lot of gaping holes in the first half. Second half, a different story, but it really was, third string on third string. Kind of reflected the Giants' lack of quality depth in that second half, but the offense did come back, and that did sprinkle some good vibes on it. I also thought... Kayvon Thibodeaux played okay before the injury, and I did want to talk about his injury and that specific play. So Thaddeus Moss, comes back, goes for the crack block, goes for the low block. Thibodeaux absolutely thinks he's going high on him. Similar size players. there's two ways to look at it. First of all, it is a legal block. There's no way you can look. It's legal. As the NFL rule books, it's legal. My way of thinking is this. You guys are both the same size. I don't see why it's necessary for you to take his legs and his knees out. I don't. That's just personally. Now, if you were 5'6" going against, Thibodeaux at 6'4", 6'5", I get it. You're probably not going to take him out, taking him up high. You're not going to take him out, taking him up in the middle. You go for his legs. It is what it is. I do not like that block. I do not like, Moss going for that. I understand he's trying to make the team. He's trying to make an impact, and it was a legal hit. But you don't do that. You don't throw yourself at someone's knees when you're the same size. And I know some people will disagree. That's fine. You don't throw yourself at someone's knees when you're the same size as them. You just don't play football that way. And the Giants dodged a massive bullet, and I think Moss dodged a massive bullet because while there was some, kickback against him, if that's a torn ACL for Kayvon Thibodeaux, there's going to be a lot more kickback against Moss. On the other side of it, Thibodeaux has to be smarter there. He has to get his shoulder down, get his hands down, brace himself when that blocker's coming. You cannot let a man dive into your knees like that on the football field in an NFL game. You just cannot. And it's one of those rookie deals where he's going to learn when he's playing in these games, I have to protect myself. These guys are fighting for a job. A lot of people are saying it's the preseason. You shouldn't hit like that, block like that. It's the preseason. It's the preseason. Moss is fighting for a job by all accounts, right? And while I don't agree with it, in his head, he's like, I got to take this guy out. So Thibodeaux has to learn from that. Luckily, it was only an MCL injury. I say only, even though it's a 3 to 4 to 5 week injury. It's because it looked really bad when he was on that MetLife turf. I won't say anything else about it. It looked bad when he was grabbing that knee. And he gets up, he walks by the cart, he waves off the cart, and he's kind of gesturing and animated, on the sidelines. That could have been a really bad injury for him. So looking like he'll be back week 1, week 2, no rush. Let the rookie come back when he can. No need to risk further injury. But a really nasty block almost ruined a pretty good night for the Giants. And when they thought they got out of the woods there, you got Graham Gano with a concussion. He was trying to make a play on a return. Giants special teams has struggled for years now, and it's still struggling here in the preseason. The kicker gets a concussion, but still you're thinking, okay, Thibodeaux doesn't look terrible. Gano has a concussion. Maybe it'll be a couple weeks. Promising rookie Darian Beavers, who I had to lock down the interior linebacker 2 job, tears his ACL in that game. Foot gets caught in the ground. He can't get it out. Contact comes. Torn ACL out for the season. Really devastating injury for the Giants. Even though he was just a rookie, he was making some plays out there, and he was looking good. And I had him starting. So, really tough injury. It opens up the door for players like Mike McFadden, maybe Carter Coughlin. Even though he had the rough in the passer, he was a little more active late in the fourth. But tough injury. I hope the kid bounces back. Especially to have that injury in your rookie year is devastating while you're trying to learn a defense. You're trying to learn a professional life in the NFL. All the best wishes for him, Darian Beavers. I hope he has a speedy, healthy recovery, but really tough. He dodged the bullet with Thibodeaux. Gano, not too sure yet. It's a concussion, probably be a couple of weeks. Definitely don't want to risk it with him. But you didn't dodge the bullet with Beavers, so that was a tough hit. All in all, if I were to recap it, I would give this game a B+ for the Giants. Only reason I don't give it an A is because it was against the backups of the Cincinnati Bengals. But I think you saw some progress. You saw the offense start to develop. You saw the offensive line pass block. That's the lasting image in my mind when I think about that game versus the Bengals, is that offensive line pushing forward when the ball is snapped, right? How many times as a Giants fan have you seen the ball snap and that offensive line get pushed back instantly, almost into the quarterback and running back's lap? So that was nice to see. Great progress. Giants head into the game versus the Jets. Probably not going to see a lot of starters play. Maybe a drive, possibly. I doubt it. And then you're looking at opening day. You're looking at the Titans on the road. Very difficult game. You want to stay healthy next week. You want to go into that first regular season game as healthy as possible. But you got to be happy. And listening to Brian Daboll, talk about it after the game, and he's like, listen, I love that kid when talking about Daniel Jones. We're working on it. We're communicating. We're working through learning this offense. It was almost the first real authentic of, hey, I support Daniel Jones. I have his back. That's stamp. That's signal. And it was sincere. And I think Daboll really seen last night that Jones can play. And he can throw the ball when he's protected. Let's not forget, Daniel Jones has played behind a bottom 5 offensive line for his entire career. You know, this kid has never had a good offensive line or a good running game or good coaching or good coordinator or healthy receivers. So it was nice to see, and Brian Daboll was happy about it. Last thing, you know, one thing you seen last night from this Giants team was effort, fight, and finish. And even when the Bengals scored, Giants came right back and took the lead. Bengals came back and scored again. Webb led them right down the field for another touchdown. I think that was significant last night because when you watch that Giants team, you also didn't see a lot of mistakes. You seen a tough team, you seen a smart team, a resilient team, and a team that wanted to win and went after it. So, big win for the Giants. A lot of progress. I think you've seen some great things. On to the Jets. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate all the support. Till next time.